and welcome back to the weird and the wonderful with Strange Bones. That's me. And as we get going, I do apologize for starting this ever so slightly late, but as you well know, the rules of technology are that updates will only happen a minute before you actually want to use the program, because that's how we do these things. Because technology, as you know, is secretly in charge. But nevertheless, with all of that wonderful joy, let's begin the evening's live, late as we are. So, as you know, it is our habit to go to different countries and cultures around the world and have a look at what might be out there to see if we find it interesting, curious, or informative, or weird. And the current topic is architecture and archaeology. Buildings, things that might be just interesting, strange, or maybe have an even weirder connection. We shall find out. And as we get on going, I'm going to remind you all that we have just one rule on the channel. And that rule is don't be rude. Because if you are rude, then we shall give you the boot. Because after all, we're here for the curiosity, for the interest, for the amusement, and for the pleasure thereof. And rudeness simply doesn't make it good for anybody. So, if anybody is rude, we kick them off. That said, though, you are more than welcome to have different opinions. You can agree, you can disagree, you can do all of that. We absolutely encourage as much commenting as possible. We love comments. I am a little strict about who joins the live, I will be fair to say, because unfortunately, over the course of the varying lives that we have done, unfortunately we have a number of trolls, and they can be quite rude. And so I generally am careful who I allow to join me live, because we don't need foul language and worse. So in that case, we do try to limit. But that said, I'm going to absolutely invite you to like, share, subscribe, do all of the wonderful things that make the channel possible to do. We rely on you. You guys are what make it possible. Now, tonight, we have tried before to do this particular topic and got rabbit-holed in quite a serious way. So we're going to have another go at actually getting on and doing it instead of running off into various strange things. But we may get rabbit-holed just a little bit because, of course, for those of you who didn't know, maybe you did know, today was the day of the rapture. And we were supposed to all be taken off, or at least the good ones among us. And unfortunately, alas, I'm still here and you guys are still here, so perhaps we were not quite good enough, which is a bit of a worry. I'm not entirely sure what I did wrong, but apparently I was not sufficient for rapturing. But that said, it's an interesting concept, and believe it or not, it is a concept which is not either traditional or biblical, despite what you might think. It is a apocryphal topic that came out only in the 1830s with a chap that rewrote the Bible to his own personal preference. I believe it was called the Schofield Bible. So yeah, unfortunately, the rapture is not biblical or Christian. So I'm not terribly surprised that we're all still here. But that's okay, because I think we're pretty good people, and I certainly enjoy having all of you guys on. If any of you did notice anybody floating off, then I would absolutely encourage you to let us know. I didn't see anything, to be fair, but it was raining very hard today and I didn't go out much. So, and the shops were still busy when I did. So perhaps it was not a true thing. Nevertheless, for those of us who are still here and haven't been raptured as promised, let's talk about the weird and the wonderful. So China is our topic. And what mysteries are found in archaeology and architecture in China? Well, quite a lot, as a matter of fact. There's a number of things which apparently are quite confusing to architects and archaeologists and more, simply because they're not too sure who did the buildings, or the remains, of course, seeing as it's archaeology. So the unknown origin and purpose of the Longyu caves is a good example, and we shall look into those. The intricate ancient tombs of the Shishir dynasty that are, of course, pyramids. I mean, pyramids everywhere. I mean, every country we have gone to, there are pyramids. Why pyramids? There are so many questions to do with pyramids. And yes, we have more pyramids. We also have the Shimao Fortress City with its mysterious carvings and evidence of human sacrifice, which sounds just a little creepy. Other architectural wonders include the modern shadowless church in Chengdu that defies lighting principles. An absolutely fascinating place, but a truly weird one, because perhaps unintentionally they managed to create architecture that is somehow automatically disturbing to human perception. Then the stilted buildings and the rather enigmatic Jingao Temple, noted for its ancient construction techniques. So we have those, and then of course, to add to it and make it weird, because after all, what's the point of doing the weird and the wonderful if we don't add the weird? Possible alien connections? We shall see. Let's see what we do and what we find, and I hope you enjoy all of it. So let's start with the Longyu Caves. So this is a set of 24 sandstone caves in the Zhejiang province. Now the problem is, while we know what they are sandstone caverns and they are artificial, they were made by people, what we don't know is who did them. We know that there is a 17th century poem that mentions them, and pottery from the Han Dynasty, which is around the year 200 BC to around 23 CE, were found inside. So they're old, very old, but who could have made them? You have the Shishir dynasty tombs, which are our pyramids. Seems that pyramids and death go hand in hand a very interesting setup. The Shimao Fortress City is a 300-year-old fortress with a stepped pyramid with all of its weird carvings, and it seems that they got up to wicked things there. So we have to find out more about it. Why is no one in the chat? Would you like to come in, Henna? Normally we allow certain people in the chats that we know. So you, for example, are a known person and would be welcome to join the chat. But sometimes I was too free with letting people into the chat. And what happened, unfortunately, was we got a particular bunch of trolls that were very, very fond of swearing and insulting and disrupting everything. So nowadays I wait until it's somebody that I know, such as yourself, that is more likely to be somebody who is actually here because they enjoy the chat. So let me drop you an invite. You are more than welcome to join. And in that case, perhaps we will be capable of having a civil life that we all enjoy. Huge thanks for the likes there. I do encourage everybody, like, share, subscribe, do the good deeds, and give lots of gifts because we like gifts. So yeah, if you do want to join, it's going to be somebody that is more or less known, that's been before in that regard and does sort of follow me rather than the trolls. Mic not working. Oh no, that's a bad one. But do feel free. You're welcome to try and join. I will send another invite for you if you like. But do comment. Do comment. Do comment. So the next interesting thing are known as the 72 strange buildings. And they're a modern interpretation, weirdly enough, found in Zhangjiaji. My Chinese is awful. If you speak Chinese, I apologize now. I will butcher everything. Know this. And they come from ancient Tujia ethnic minorities' traditional architecture with their overhanging wooden structures and nighttime illumination, which just sounds interesting. The shadowless church, of course, and then the Feiying Pagoda, again in the Zhejiang province, that combines brick and timber and a strange wooden keel in its architecture that means that it stood for 1,000 years. So absolutely interesting stuff to go with, but we're going to start with something that really fits our preference. Endless Thoughts, huge welcome. It's always absolutely wonderful to have you on. Much thanks for the likes. You are more than welcome to join or comment, as is your preference, I know. We are doing China for our architecture, and of course we are starting with the Chinese pyramids, because why wouldn't we? We love Chinese things and we like pyramids. So the first one on the list is the rather curious Great White Pyramid. Now this one is 1,000 feet tall, which is pretty cool. For those of you who don't use yards and feet, 3 feet is about a meter. So it's still pretty high. I mean, a bit over 300 meters tall. Not bad for a pyramid. Very interesting. It's known as the Great White Pyramid, which is an interesting thing. Why white? Let's find out. It's apparently from the Sanjingdui civilization, about which we know very little, it seems. So conspiracy theories abound about this pyramid. It's now near Xi'an, in the Shaanxi province. I do hope I said that right. Now, the legend is of this great white pyramid that gained traction in the West after World War II based on pilot sightings. Though researchers have not located the pyramid of that size, satellite images confirm the existence of a number of pyramids, including the enormous mausoleum of the Emperor Qin Shi Huang. And that's really important. Well, we can't show you the images of the White Pyramid because while it was seen by pilots in World War II, it apparently has vanished. Now, were they mistaken? Is it something that was thereafter removed? We're not really sure. Pyramids, they're weird. Now, we do need to make a brief mention on Emperor Qin Shi Huang. Now, basically, he was a little boy when he became emperor. And it was way, way, way back in the day when China was actually, I think it was 7 kingdoms. It was not China. There was no China. And he became the king of his kingdom. And the first thing he did, as all good kings do, is find out every single possible person who might be an opponent to be him being king, and wipe them, their families, their friends, and all supporters of them entirely out. He then went on to really reinforcing his kingdom and establishing an incredibly powerful army. His next step was to conquer all 7 of the kingdoms that made up ancient China, wipe them out entirely. Black screen? Dunno. Not too sure what you're asking, Hannah. Give a bit of an explanation. And then unify China under him. And then he called himself, which apparently is the meaning of Qin Shi Huang, the God King of all China, which is, I suppose, ambitious, but he did it. He is also the bugger who then started reinforcing the entirety of the security of China and started the building of, yes, the Great Wall. Okay, that's very strange. I wonder why. No sound and nothing on the screen. Does anybody else have a problem with me? Can you hear me? Can you see me? Anyone else? Is it a thing that maybe you must jump out and come back in, Hannah? I think other people can hear me because they've given a couple of comments, so I'm assuming. Do try, because I'd like to have you on. So yeah, he was the guy that started the building of the Great Wall. But what makes him also interesting is something that is a bit of a conspiracy, but which is an answered conspiracy. You know all the Terracotta Army? Yep, that was his tomb. And he was obsessed with becoming immortal. And he tried millions of things, including taking a mercury-based concoction, for want of a better word, which he thought would make him immortal, but mercury does quite the opposite, alas, and he died by the time he was about 44. But he was not only ambitious, he was vastly effective and terribly ruthless. Yes, I thought you did, because you made a comment based on something I said. So I don't know what happened to Henna. That's not... Huge thanks, by the way, for the wonderful gifts you have given. I do appreciate that massively, Endless Thoughts. We'll try and see if we can get herself back and see if that works. We shall see. But with that, he even sent off boats to search for a mysterious island that's supposed to have existed where the ambrosia of the gods was made, and therefore that would allow him to be immortal. But the expedition never returned, weirdly enough. Who knows what happened to it? So he was the big boy, the man that mattered. Now, interestingly enough, excavation is not done on the Great Tomb, because archaeologists are afraid. Now you might say, why? Well, there are several possible reasons, but the true one is slightly more prosaic, alas. His tomb has been scanned by LiDAR and varied other things, and it shows that the apparent writings are accurate. Could have been. We're going to find out more, I hope. Or it was removed entirely, we don't know. Or it was something else. Or yes, they were possibly on too much caffeine. That is also possible. But more than one pilot said they saw it. So who's to say? Anyway, there are masses of rivers of mercury inside the tomb. And they know this by scanning compositions and so forth. So clearly going in would be very dangerous. Number two, the way in is like serious hardcore Indiana Jones, filled with traps. Now granted, we could manage that, and the traps probably don't work after the thousands of years since he did his tomb, because he built it himself. He said, we're going to do it like this. You know, he didn't leave it to chance. Remember that the political setups in China have moved on quite dramatically and changed quite a lot, so it could well have been destroyed. I don't think nuked as in nuked necessarily, but certainly destroyed for whatever reason. A lot of weird things have happened. We do know, amongst other things, as with his tomb, the original terracotta army were all painted in the most gorgeous colors. And within about 15 minutes of exposure to air, all the colors simply fell off, which is terribly sad. And the reason that archaeologists are too afraid to excavate the tomb is because we don't yet have the technology to do it in a manner that could seal the atmosphere in so as not to destroy it. So it's not that they're afraid of the traps and the rivers of mercury and all the other Indiana Jonesy type stuff, which are in there, don't get me wrong. But then, of course, the problem is we're all dying to know what else is in there, because this is the guy that made China. There would be no China were it not for him. So there's that. Now, of course, there is more, because we do know that... well, we don't know. By and large, we think not. I don't think China did. But there may have been events that caused the destruction of places. Who knows? Maybe it got bombed during the war. I mean, there were a lot more bombs than just the nuke. And we're talking only one building. It could well have been destroyed. We don't know. The North Koreans absolutely did. We do know that. I don't think the Chinese did. But again, who's to say? It's an interesting question. Now, alternative history enthusiasts, like the famous Hartwig Hausdorff, claim that some of the pyramids there, or maybe all of them, were built by aliens or by a lost advanced civilization. But archaeologists say that no, these are built by people, by the Chinese, though they are thousands of years old, which makes them pretty impressive. A recurring conspiracy theory alleges that the Chinese government covers up the pyramids with soil and trees and prevents their excavation to hide evidence of a non-Han origin Chinese civilization. Now, I don't know if this is true, but we do know that there is a lot more to Chinese civilization than is the general. There is a lot more to pretty much everybody's civilization than we know. That's absolute fact. And we're finding out more all the time. So there is that. We know that many of the tomb mounds are publicly known, which seems to say that a cover-up is wrong. Some have attached museums, and excavations are often delayed due to preservation concerns, such as the mercury levels reported in the Qishi Huang's tomb. So yeah, absolutely, that is true. However, we have found ruins, which is very interesting, of the Sanxingdui civilization, which apparently no longer exists, which is pretty cool. And there are unique bronze, gold, and jade artifacts that challenge the traditional view that the Yellow River Valley was the sole cradle of the Chinese civilization, and led to speculation about the origins, including unproven links to external cultures. We do know that over time, different dynasties have conquered and taken over. So I think it might be true both sides. Some have alleged that the Sanxingdui treasures, which do not fit into the Yellow River historical narrative, were hidden to suppress knowledge of rival or non-Han peoples. But it's contradicted by the fact that the Chinese government publicly announced and has promoted ongoing excavation of the site, which began in the 1920s. I think really and truly, while the Han peoples took over China, and it's the primary force behind its becoming what it is, certainly there were others before that. I mean, it's true of most places that current civilizations are built on previous peoples and such. Now, there are also the Acheulean axes from the Sichuan Pilu site that caused quite a bit of controversy, because these tools were typically associated with prehistoric sites in Africa and Western Eurasia. Though scientifically understood as evidence of wider tool-making development, fringe interpretations suggest the lineage challenges established understanding. And a lot of people like to point out that everywhere was built by Africa originally, but I think that's stretching the truth a little bit. I personally, and this is purely me, don't think that the single origin of humanity is necessarily true either. But that's just me personally. I think that there were multiple origins for multiple reasons. Now, part of the reason for all of the conspiracy theories is that there was a whole lot of recovered artifacts that were actually being taken overseas to museums in London and America for examination in 1929, and the ship that was carrying them apparently went down and they were all lost, and people said no, actually it was a cover-up. But I don't know. Nevertheless, Chinese pyramids, we can have a look at some of those. So let's just quickly pop up a pic of some Chinese pyramids, because they are quite interesting, regardless that they might not be the giant ones, and they might not be made by aliens, alas, though I'd prefer if they were, because after all, we like aliens, don't we? But it doesn't have to always be aliens, or does it? We shall see. Some people say these were made by aliens. What we do know is that they are absolutely pyramids, which is very, very interesting. And we can't help but wonder. Here we go. And we shall shift up a little to see the bottom ones. Yay! And down a little to see the top ones, which are not as good as the bottom ones. Yay! So there are absolutely pyramids in China. And these pyramids are indeed tombs, like many of the pyramids around the world. It seems that there is always a link between pyramids and death for some reason, which is weird. They are very, very interesting. They might not be as fancy anymore as the Egyptian ones, but they're still pretty damn impressive. What do I think about giants? You should have been on the live a couple of, not last one, but the one before, I think, where it seems that giants, at least, have been spoken of in many, many occasions. It seems that a lot of people around the world have believed in giants. And the last known living giants, according to ancient records, lived in Gaza. Yep, the same Gaza you know today. And they were spoken of in the Bible by the Israelites, who had to fight them to deal with their dangers. But weirdly enough, in a list of dangerous people around from Egypt, and they weren't, this is not in any part of mythology, it's just a list that was found that somebody had written, pointing out the important dangerous peoples that are out there that may or may not be necessary to deal with if it comes to it, that included very well-known surrounding peoples and cultures. Also incidentally mentioned those giants over that side because they're very aggressive. You know, like as an everyday list of watch out for these buggers type thing. So it seems giants were real, but nobody seems to be able to have found any archaeological evidence or bones of them, which is very annoying because we would like to find that. But we have found archaeological proof of hobbits. They really did exist and are a separate form of human development than Homo sapiens and Homo erectus. So we now have four known human prototypes, or types, if you will. The Homo erectus, the Homo sapiens, which are the two that we well know, the Denisovians, who it seems have different base DNA to Homo sapiens or Homo erectus, and the Homo floresiensis, I think I got that right, which were hobbits. So, well, there's the thing. There's been a number of places around the world where people said, we found giant bones, and the bones then disappeared, and it was quickly explained that they weren't real. Nevada is one, but there's 8 or 10 other places as well. So it's possible, I suppose, that it's a giant cover-up. We're not sure. But why would it be covered up? I mean, would it make that big a difference? We know that in archaeology we found different human remains of different kinds. We know that there are different kinds of Homo sapiens straight off. I mean, there are a lot of different races. That's different kinds of Homo sapiens. So you get differences. Why would there be such a worry about a cover-up? We're not sure. Particularly when they exist in the mythologies of virtually every country in the world, which again makes it a very weird thing. And I do believe there is mention in China as well. Let me just see if I can still find my notes on that, because we did do it. Yes. Okay, so to give you an idea, I'm 6 foot tall. That's historically pretty large. Modern day, not so much, but historically pretty large. Most people average around between 3.5 to 4.5 feet tall. Most places around. The countries that were exceptions were the Chthonic tribes, and of course they pretty much made me, if that makes sense. 6 feet is around about 1 meter 80. Now, they did find unusually tall skeletons in a 5,000-year-old graveyard in the Shandong province. Now, the Chinese are not known to be tall even today, and would have been a lot shorter then, but these skeletons were 1.9 meters tall on average, which is way bigger than any of the peoples of that time should have been. They were discovered in graves in the Jiaojia village in Shandong. Why were they so tall? Well, archaeologists scrambling to explain say that the diet that they would have had in the area would have been very good, which means they would have grown better than everyone else. And also, they had higher status and therefore better access to things that would have improved their superior physique. That sounds like a dumb explanation to me, because as a race, most Asians are a fair bit shorter. They just are. Some people are tall, some people are short. I mean, we know that, for example, in Africa you have the pygmies who are around 3 feet tall to this day. We have hobbits, yes. And we have the Tutsi. And the Watutsi are known to average 6 to 7 feet easy. They are very tall people. So different people are shorter and taller. Why shouldn't there be quite ordinary reasons for being tall? So giants for their time. So modern standards might not say that they are giants, but that's because we're used to a much taller people, which is kind of different. Does that matter? Now, we do have a number of interesting... What is a tokoloshi? Well, that depends how you look at it. Looking at the stories, I'm going to throw it out there that a tokoloshi is either one of two things. It's not a cryptid because it seems to have the ability to slip through shadows, which is not typical to a cryptid. Okay. I'm going to argue it's either some form of spirit being, or, quite interestingly, it's the African version of a skinwalker. How about that? Because it seems to share a great deal in common with the Navajo view of a skinwalker. Hello to I don't know, to be honest. Well, join us. We're trying to find out too. So yeah, I'm going to put the guess out and say a tokolosh is actually the African version of a skinwalker. How's that? Interesting things about the Chinese pyramids is that they are far, far, far older than the Egyptian pyramids. No, sorry, got that the wrong way around. The Egyptian pyramids are far, far older because the Great Pyramids, if we're talking about those, were about 4,500 years ago. And China had not even formed the Xia dynasty at that. So if we go by the records of the Grand Historian, the Xia dynasty was only formed about 4,200 years ago. So the pyramids would have been built a fair bit after that. They are not natural formations. They are built on naturally occurring mountains, but they are absolutely man-made pyramids on top. So there is that. We know that the tomb of General Jianjin was built around 37 BC to 500 AD. How's that for an answer? Reasonable amount of time. Very, very interesting, because if you were to really take a guess at it, if you thought it was in South America, you couldn't be blamed for thinking it just by looking at it. The style of it is terribly similar. We know that there are all kinds of pottery figurines found inside them of animals, servants, and more in silk robes and all kinds of things like that, which is pretty cool. So very sophisticated. Now, the White Pyramid Let's talk about that. It was supposed to be found in the Shanxi province, and it was the US Army Air Corps pilot James Gaussman who is said to have seen a white jewel-topped pyramid during a flight between India and China during World War II. Colonel Maurice Sheehan, Far Eastern director of the Transworld Airline, gave an eyewitness account of his encounter with the pyramid in 1947 to the New York Times. A photo of Sheehan's pyramid appeared and was attributed to James Gaussman. Chris Meyer showed the pyramid in the photo and tried to find out more, and it seems that they may have been slightly mistaken in that it's the Maoling mausoleum of the Emperor Wu outside of Xi'an, not actually the pyramid. Everybody says that. There are pyramids, as we have said, and some of them are tombs, some of them are stepped pyramids, some of them are more weird mountain type things as well, which adds to the pyramidy mythology, but there are absolutely pyramids. So, but what about their connections and the conspiracy theories? In short, were there aliens in China? Well, we have a number of arguments for that. There's the Dropa stones, which we've spoken of before, disc-shaped stones with inscriptions found in the Bayan-Kara Ula Mountains of China, which some interpret as representing a crashed alien ship and its interaction with ancient peoples. The official scientific view is that's rubbish. The problem with the official scientific view is their other answer is we also don't know what they are. The other interesting thing which may or may not prove ancient aliens in China is the Sanxingdui artifacts, because many of the sort of features on the statues, weirdly enough, are almost exactly the same as popular depictions of the Greys. But again, archaeologists say that these are artistic exaggerations common in ancient cultures to convey divine or supernatural perception. So there is a quick answer, but not a good answer, if that makes sense. Now, we do know that the Sanxingdui artifacts show quite a bit of advanced civilization for the time, to be fair. So most people in formal science say that there are no aliens out there. There is no likelihood that aliens were ever running around doing their thing. And instead, what we have are interesting things. Now, let's look at the problems with interesting things. So, some of these archaeological sites include the 3,200-year-old Sanxingdui culture, which left behind no written records, no human remains, and the even older Shemal site, which is around 4,300 years old, with mysterious wall carvings of serpents and half-human beasts, and other intriguing findings, including the hanging coffins of the Bo people hanging on the cliffs in the mountains, and the even older Quina-style stone tools found in the Longtang region, hinting at a mysterious connection to ancient hominids like the Denisovians, who, as we know, are very old. So it seems that we have enough real life mysteries that just haven't been answered. So, great. Shangdui culture. Why did it disappear? Because it suddenly kind of did after a few centuries. No written records whatsoever, and no bodies. That's kind of weird. Were they taken away by aliens? Then, of course, we have the Shimao, which not only have a whole collection of monsters, but also maybe human sacrifice, and then the bow hanging coffins. So let's dive into those quickly. Now, we know that the Shimao did do some pretty awesome buildings and fortifications. Sorry, my eyeballs are a little bit dry. So it's a Neolithic site, which is pretty old. It's in Shanxi in China. It's part of the Loess Plateau in the northern part, on the Ordos Desert. It's dated around 2000 BC, which is pretty old, okay? And it's the largest known walled site of that period at around 400 hectares. The fortifications were originally believed to be a section of the Great Wall of China, but the discovery of jade pieces prompted an archaeological investigation that showed that it was Neolithic. Now, carved jade and buildings from the Neolithic age is pretty impressive right off bat. Discovery of Shimao has been challenging the traditional views favoring the model of the preliminary development of complex societies in the Central Plains. Instead, a larger and sophisticated set of buildings existed outside of the Central Plains well before, and made the current view a little bit off in its timing, let's say that. Now, we know that it is a walled city. It had inner and outer stone walls, different to the rammed earth typical of the Central Plain civilization. They averaged around 2.5 meters thick, with perimeters approximately 4,200 meters and 5,700 meters for the two walls. They had gates, turrets, watchtowers, the palace center, which was, wait for it, you know what I'm going to say, don't you? Yes, you do. A stepped pyramid. Based on it, the hill that had been reworked to make 11 platforms with the height of 70 meters. Each of these was reinforced by stone buttresses, which is pretty cool. So all sorts of interesting features, including residential zones, cemeteries, craft workshops, palace workshops, palace residences, blah, blah, blah. And then interestingly, relief sculptures and jade embedded in the city walls to provide, possibly to provide protection, serpents, monsters, and 80 human skulls under the city gate, mostly young girls, suggesting a ritual sacrifice, which is quite awful in and of itself. It's better than most other later structures in other places, so much older. Now, it seems to have connections with the Eurasian steppes, where you had bronze making and livestock. And it seems that the style of human faces in Shamao are closer to the Okhinev culture and the Karakol culture and the Chernochek culture, which are further north than China. They are absolutely stylized and animal-like and more, which is very, very interesting. There are even metal items that they say are bracelets, but basically they look like gear wheels, which seems to imply, if you're even a little bit conspiratorial in your view, that maybe they had ancient technology. Now, another interesting thing are the Sanjing Dao artifacts, which includes, amongst other things, bronze masks, which are very, very weird. Some of them have protruding eyes or strange, oversized, elongated features, which some people have said clearly show that it was alien in that regard. But what's weird is many of the objects, not just the masks, have eyes on them or are eye-shaped. And it seems that eyes were very important to the religion somehow. And with them, of course, a number of other shamanistic style artifacts that were found as well. And they put a lot of effort into making these things. They were pretty cool. One of the weirdest set, I'm going to see if I can throw you a picky of that, because why not? They're weird, we like them, and we like weird, do we not? So let's see what we can do. We're going to go with that. And I just stuffed it up because, after all, that's what I do. I'm cunning like that. I press the wrong button all the time. But nevertheless, here we go. Let's try it with feeling this time. Dum, 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 dum. Ta-da! So, on that side you can see some of the more shamanistic, and on that side you can see the very weird featured artifact mask, which has a very alien look. So, yes, interesting if nothing else. But let's talk about hanging coffins. Why would you do something like this? So basically, these coffins, instead of being buried, are essentially nailed to the side of a cliff. And then they're left there. So why? It seems to have been a particular form of burial that certain ethnic minorities followed. The Bo people, who are now extinct in the Sichuan and Yunnan provinces. Coffins of various shapes, mostly carved from a whole piece of wood, hanging on beams projecting out from the vertical faces of cliffs, on natural rock projections sometimes. And they're one of the non-Han people of China, native southern China, prior to the Qin-Han conquest southward. And the sparse descriptions of them in Chinese records describe them as being a prosperous farming culture and accomplished horsemen. But they became victims of genocide by the Ming dynasty and are effectively extinct. Their language, rituals, and behaviors are entirely unknown to archaeologists. They may have links to the Ku people, who also practice hanging coffins. So maybe some survived in other places. Now, nobody knows why they insisted on putting their dead up on cliffs instead of burying them. And it's just one of those strange mysteries that nobody has managed to explain. But nevertheless, we like mysteries, and so we mention them. Now, moving along. We are going to talk no, we're not, because for some reason that's been blocked. Weird. We are going to talk about the Longyu Caves, now that I've got the correct piece up. So, in 1992, there were 4 farmers in Longyu County in the Kuzu Prefecture in Zhejiang province on the east coast of China. They found these series of pools scattered near the small village of Xianbeikun, and they got curious about the great depths of these pools. So to satisfy this curiosity, which, like patience, is an important thing in science, they decided to drain 5 of the pools to see what was in there. And what they found were enormous caverns dug out of the sandstone by people. So research, of course, got interested very quickly, and they came to check it out and find out more. And they discovered that the caves were dug at least 2,000 years ago. One, however, which is a problem, because they're hard to date that neither their construction or existence in a culture famed for its writing and recording of things is mentioned anywhere. They don't exist. So why? So on the banks of the Jinan River, about 200 kilometers northwest, there are more similar caves called the Huahan mysterious grottos that were recently discovered. And using lichenometric dating, they were built more than 1,500 years after the Longyu caves, so towards the end of the Min dynasty. So at the same time as the Longyu caves, remains found during the course of exploration and clearing of the Huashan caves, they found oil lamps, glazed ceramic wares, pots, bowls, pitchers, and other objects that said that they came from the Jin dynasty around 265 to 439 AD. So that means that the Longyu grottos are pretty old, at least. Maybe not quite 2,000, but they ain't young. Let's say that. Okay. So there are 24 caves, totally excavated area of more than 30,000 meters squared. So 30 kilometers of, which are pretty enormous for man-made underground structures. Their ceiling, walls and pillars were carved out of the sandstone in the same pattern in a succession of parallel bands 60 centimeters wide, using equally parallel lines of chiseling at an angle of 60 degrees to the axis of the band. Finally, all the caves retain a similar structure, even though they're not connected to each other. The structure is in the shape of an inverted square, part of which is at the entrance and the narrowest part at the end of the roof, with a slope of about 45 degrees at the bottom. They think it may have been a work ordered by an emperor because of the reliefs found on the walls. Other theories say that it was a quarry for extracting building materials, but that doesn't explain the carvings and reliefs. Others say that it might have been a palace complex, or used to house part of his armies, or an imperial mausoleum. Given that there is nothing in terms of documents, very little in terms of artifacts or evidence, it seems that we can't tell at all. They are extraordinary, they are beautifully carved out, and they are huge, and they are truly quite expert. But yeah, figuring out what they are is very difficult. So, given that we don't know, I don't really know what to tell you. It's another mystery, and again, we're going to have to blame aliens. Because after all, that's what we do. Now, in case you're wondering what they look like, as you should, I will show you, as I should. So let's just pop that up and you can give your opinion thereon. Ta-da! And they do look pretty cool, I mean, right there. And what's really interesting is if you look very carefully at them, you realize that the average person would be quite small compared to how big these, there we go, there's one on the one side. To my right there is a person. So, yeah, they're huge, which is awesome. And no, we do not know who made them, why they were made, what the story was, just that they're incredibly big and really interesting. Nevertheless, moving along with more weird, wonderful and interesting. Again, much thanks for those amazing likes. I do appreciate it. I remind you all, like, share, subscribe and more, because without it, we don't keep going. But what about cryptids in archaeology? We know that in mythology, China's got some pretty funky creatures, including dragons and more. Is there archaeological evidence to say that there is? Well, the Guaoshan is a cryptid like a saber-toothed cat that's described in local folklore from the mountain areas of Shenongjia and Hooping Mountains. But in 1994, hikers reported seeing a large yellow fanged cat. Could it have been a prehistoric saber-toothed cat? Well, archaeologists can't find anything to support it, but as we know, that doesn't mean it isn't there. So we're going to have to say that that's a possibility. We know that the Hezhugong is a cryptid from the Yunnan province that's supposed to be something between a small hippopotamus or a river pig. And archaeologists have discovered countless animal remains throughout China, but none that seem to appear to be the cryptid. However, I'm going to put it to you that one of the biggest failures in archaeology is putting flesh on bone. It's gotten better, but we've failed spectacularly on many occasions as to what a creature might have looked like, judging from the bones. And in terms of, I mean, the hippo is a prime example. What it might be thought to look like from the bones alone compared to what it does look like is quite different. So maybe, yeah. And hippos are very well known, so why shouldn't it be? Now, we have obviously found all kinds of carvings of dragons, including a 5,000-year-old jade dragon that came out of a tomb, which everybody says is spiritual belief in iconography and does not prove the existence of cryptids. You do not pass go. You do not collect your $200. What does that mean? Well, in the face of things, we see all sorts of evidence in stories for things that, quite sadly, archaeology says doesn't exist. But it seems that many of them absolutely do. So I'm going to argue at least that we need to keep an open mind. You never know what may or may not have been out there. We know that amongst other things as well, tools that shouldn't have existed in China showing yet another possible Neanderthal-like hominid may well have existed in China. And these are 50,000 to 60,000-year-old artifacts, which contradicts the long-held assumption that Stone Age people in East Asia only started making tools much, much, much later. It shows that we're actually wrong. And of course, the presence of these stone tools basically shows that people have developed in different areas, almost independently in many ways. And maybe we now need to start rethinking what history really is, because the idea of a single core civilization spreading outwards is essentially now outdated. It shows that it was far more complex and diverse, with multiple centers of civilization that influenced and interacted with one another. And that may prove that we actually not only have different human races, but different human origins, which is quite fascinating. It may have gone along a similar manner, but that might have been due to geography and atmosphere and all the rest of that. So we might be far weirder in and of ourselves than you think. Now, is there any proof of aliens? No. Not that we can conclusively say. Do we think there might be aliens? Of course we do. The Dropa stones, the Sanxingdui ruins and more all seem to imply that they very well may be. And we know that there are a great deal of strange anomalies all over the world which remarkably look quite similar, which makes it quite weird in a way. So can we say that there is more to be looked into? Can we say that aliens don't exist? No, we can't. Not really. We can't necessarily prove that they do either. But I almost would put it to you that it seems arrogant to think we are the only intelligences ever to develop in that regard. So I think we do need to consider that there might be possible other sources. Now, can there be any other things out there that may or may not be important? Well, yes, of course we can. And as you go around the world, I bring it back once again to the original question, why all the pyramids? We know for a fact that they appear in every single country practically in the world, or at least on every continent. Let's say that, not every country, on every continent of the world. We know that they are now discovering, for example, that what we thought we knew about the South American civilizations is frankly a load of rubbish. They were far bigger and far more advanced than we have ever thought. And one of the real reasons why they disappeared, sadly, is our fault. When Europeans went there, they brought with them smallpox unwittingly, to which the locals had absolutely no physical defense, and it wiped out huge amounts of people. And the difficulty there is most of the structures and their buildings and things, except for certain temples, were made of wood, not stone. And of course the jungle just ate that up. We know that even the stone structures are very, very hidden because of the jungle. Yes, you are quite right. Blaze, yes. Sorry, my eyesight is not great when they go a bit dry. I need to put some drops in, which I will do after the live. But yeah, we've seen so many places where actually there was a lot more going on. And the problem with the Amazon is you just can't get in it. It's such solid jungle. Going there is hard. And it's so full of dangerous creatures and poisonous creatures that having got there, it's tough living there. So there's huge things hidden. Furthermore, I'm going to bring you back to the other theory that I have, that we live in a world that is actually cyclic, and we get a constant cycle of global cooling and global warming. And what we forget is that when the ice packs on the poles reform, they draw water in, which means the level of the ocean will drop. So there could be all kinds of civilization in places that are currently submerged. We know that we're in a warming cycle, which could very well mean that even portions of the world as we know it now will be lost for a time. Maybe that's how the earth keeps humanity from breeding too fast. We're like fleas, and the earth takes a bath to get rid of us, and the few that remain have to come back and repopulate. And this may have happened multiple times. Even in varying cultures, you find mythologies that say it has happened multiple times. Well, we're kind of getting to the point where it's being proved in that way. And that's pretty impressive in and of itself. So we may have reached higher levels of technology multiple times and then lost it all. I mean, for example, I own a car. It is pretty impressive technology. I drive it very well. It's a vehicle, but I could never build one. So if the world went south and everything got wiped out and I had to run away and survive, I couldn't rebuild a car. I personally just don't have the knowledge. And I think that's true of the majority of people around the world. The ones that can do it are a specific trained bunch. And if they didn't make it through, and they didn't have the tools if they did, and they didn't have the materials if they did, you might then discover that we would lose the technology after a few generations. We'd be too busy trying to re-establish and survive and all the rest to teach on that. So we could very, very easily build and lose and build and lose and build and lose. Thanks there, Gigi, for the following. I do appreciate. Remember, guys, like, share, subscribe. Send lots of gifts, do all the good stuff. We love it when you do that. But yeah, I don't know, what do you guys think? Give us a comment. Join and give some ideas of your own, what you think, because we see in China that because of the nature of history, things get lost through wars, through conquerings, and as is very often pointed out, history is written by the victor. And if you're a victor that's trying to establish that you're the incarnation of a god and must rule the entire world as you know it, then very, very clearly you don't want too many people going, we're pretty good. Of course, the guys over there, they were better. No, you wipe that kind of stuff out, because that's what a good tyrant does. When he conquers and destroys a nation and what have you. So there's a good possibility that over history, a lot of things have been lost and merely assimilated into what came after, and everyone was just like, well, it's us. We came from there, we're carrying on. When it's not exactly true as such. It's not true either. So we re-establish, we rebuild, we do it all the time. I mean, if you think about it, there are so many places around the world where we have buildings that have been built and are now no longer needed and become abandoned and go to ruins or get repurposed and lost. We do it in our own lives. So why shouldn't it have happened multiple times throughout history? And things gotten lost as a result, that archaeologists of the future will become very confused as to what may or may not have been out there. So there's that. Now, that's all we have for China. So I wanted to have a chat with every one of you and get your opinions. Do you want to continue with archaeology and architecture? Another interesting topic which I came across are creation myths. Where do people think we came from? And I would like to do a whole ton of talks on creation myths from around the world. Some of them get pretty gross, to be honest. Some of them are quite interesting. And some of them seem to have a lot in common. I mean, in the north you have the Ask and Embla. Among the Jews you have Adam and Eve, and you start seeing correlations. Ask, Adam, Embla, Eve. Does this mean anything? Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. What do different people say we are? Some people say we are made from parts of the as a world, the body of a god. The Greeks said that the gods made the universe by chopping up the titans. So there's that. Who's to say? We should look into that for certain at some stage. It's certainly an option, and it is suitably weird and suitably wonderful. We do need to go back at some stage and talk about views of the other worlds. Now, what is out there in the other world? See, the mysteries of the varied gods and who they were and what they were, right there, that is absolutely something we need to consider. The ancient gods of Mesopotamia and Babylon are probably more known than most of the ancient gods, but there are plenty out there, and some have got really lost over time, that's true. But we do want to look at them as well. And furthermore, we do need to see what other strange things can be spoken of and ask hard questions. Now, we've gone and looked at ghosts as an overview of ghosts around the world, but what we haven't talked about is why. Why ghosts? What are they trying to do, and why are they sticking around? Why do aliens visit but never seem to stop by for a serious chat and a cup of coffee? Why do people seem to find the need to have cryptids like Bigfoot? What is the story behind these things? Come to that, what are the that is entirely part of the reason I want to do the creation myth, because yes, Eve is not the first woman. Eve was the second woman, because the first woman was like, whoa, we were made equal. I'm not going to be your servant. Take that. So, yeah, Lilith, possibly a demoness, but she was made a demon because she wouldn't submit to the authority of a man. So it seems that some of the creation myths were put in place to try and keep women in their place and organize who gets what and how, and basically be a kind of order to society. And really and truly, when you start looking about many of the laws that come out of the creation stories and the old religions, some of them are just plain weird. They make no sense at all. And you start saying to yourself, hang on, surely if you're a god, you're going to want to make laws like, be nice. Don't go around being a butthead to everybody. Try not to allow for, or whatever, to make society work. Not say things, as many of them do, like, don't put two different kinds of cloth together, because that's a sin in the eyes of God. And you're like, wait, what? So if I make a jacket with a nylon outside and a wool inside, I'm going to hell. Yes, you are, because that's actually in the Bible. Who would have thought it? Why? We don't know. It seems that there is an issue. Strictly speaking, according to the laws surrounding a cockroach and a grasshopper is a reasonable legal thing to eat. But shrimps, which are basically the same thing, just aquatic, you're not. Why? We don't know. We need to talk about these things. There's a lot of questions out there. Did you know that it is reasonable that if somebody comes to visit and you need to appease them, it is fine to give them your daughter for the night, because that's good. I'm sure your daughter might have different views. Just saying. So we do need to look at what makes society work. We also need to talk about the concept of people. And here's a problem, because in the modern age, we use people to refer to everybody. But in the older times, that wasn't the case. See, me and my tribe, we're people. Foreigners are not people. So the laws about people are laws about me and my people, not laws about foreigners. Which means I can get away with a great deal more than you might think. Just saying. We also need to ask questions about all kinds of other different cultures around the world. These ones are off the top of my head because I know them better. But where do the people of Siberia say we come from? Where do the ancient Aztecs say we come from? Where do the ancient American Indians say we come from? And come to that, where do the Bushmen say we come from? And what exactly did the chameleon have to do with all of that? Because he's in there, and we need to find out more. So with that said, send ideas, send questions, send topics. As long as it is weird and it is wonderful, we'll check it out, absolutely. And don't forget, the weirder the better, after all. We do know that there is a lot more that it can be done and should be done. And with that said, I have run out of words of wisdom for tonight and will need to pull up a new topic. And we absolutely will. Let's see, we've done China, Japan, we've done Taiwan, we've done Germany, we've done England, we've done America, we've done South America, we've done varying places around Africa. We've done all the Arab countries as well. We're running out of architecture and archaeology. So we're going to need a new topic pretty soon. I'm going to see what really weird things I can find, because I also want to look at, in archaeology, some of those things that just don't make sense. Yes, the Tartarians we do know of, indeed. And it seems that they're quite popular among the Russian peoples as a conspiracy theory. Have you heard about the Sumerians? We all thought that they came entirely from Robert E. Howard's novels and were made up, but actually, no, they were not made up. They were very real, and as a people, they were mostly wiped out by the Scythians. Who the hell were they, come to that? So we do have a number of cultures that may have existed that maybe don't exist anymore. And of course that leads to the question of, where did they go? Why did they go? What happened? Who wiped them out? Like with the question of the giants of Gaza. That's where they come from. That was their place. Gaza, where modern Gaza in the news lately? Well, it was in the news back in the day when the Israelites were wandering out of Egypt. We know that right back then, yes, David and Goliath. Goliath came from Gaza. He was one of those people. Now, whether or not he was the child of an Anunnaki or something is another whole story. But we have more than one historical record, all of which say that region had giants in it. How big were they? Well, the stories get exaggerated. So in some cases up to 100 meters tall, which seems unlikely. But the more serious ones seem to imply that they could have been up to 3 meters tall, which is not impossible. Bear in mind, back in the day, we know archaeology has found gigantofauna and gigantoflora. In other words, huge examples of animals. So we have wolves now, Before that, you had what they called dire wolves, which were up to 3 to 5 times bigger than modern wolves. And modern wolves are pretty damn big, don't get me wrong. And this is true for a lot of animals. It's also true for a lot of plants. So why shouldn't there be bigger versions of people? It's a question. I think we need to do a deeper dive as well into not just the possibility of giants, but the conspiracies around, and see what we can find out about that, because clearly we need to know more. We need to also have a look at some very interesting things that have started to come up in modern science, where it's been discovered that changes in environment do have quite serious effect on creatures in a lot of ways. And so does science, and tinkering with science can be really quite dangerous. We've discovered that they've made a few complete and utter mess-ups that resulted in things that caused even the government to say, right, yeah, stop, that's enough, burn everything. Ranging from intelligent cockroaches to radioactive bunny rabbits that glow in the dark. So clearly we have issues, and who knows, maybe other things have been problematic as well. There are those who say that humanity in general is the result of aliens wanting a workforce of suitable slaves and made us in order to do that. Who's to say that's not true? We don't know. But we should try to find out. Because after all, it's pretty damn cool. Let's face it. And with that all said, I've run out of things to say. So, well, that's a good question. We know what some people are saying. Why? We have TikTok. Hi. My name's Jeff. But the majority, again, and this is the other side of things, we get certain people who are quick to write. Well, that as well, just to add to it, language is so complicated. We might need to do a bit of a deep dive into languages as well, because there are so many that as well, you see. So here's the thing. Some people get to make comments, and some people seem to be blocked. Though your last attempt was really brilliant. I enjoyed that immensely. It entertained me massively, that you so cleverly got around it, and I really did enjoy that. But yeah, sometimes TikTok gets quite shocking, and we see it happening all the time. We know for a fact that many social media platforms absolutely do censor, limit, and all the rest of it, and sometimes for reasoning that I can't understand. I had one of my videos flagged as being inappropriate, and when I asked them why, they just said it was inappropriate. And I'm like, but I didn't say anything inappropriate. And they said, no, but you claim to have knowledge that you couldn't have. And I'm like, how? How the hell do you know what I know? You don't know me. So I went and reposted it, and it stayed up. Why? I don't know. And sometimes things are just weird. But with all of that, there is one thing I do want to remind you guys, let you know. My YouTube channel for Strange Bones is up, and there are quite a few videos on there now. I am adding more. I just have to do a few things to them to get them in order. That's probably a wise point to take. So Endless Thought says she doesn't trust languages, she doesn't trust herself. History is false and translation is inaccurate. Very often, I think we do stuff up a great deal in that. I know for a fact, I studied the Bible under one of the world's best biblical scholars. He was an amazing guy, and he refused to read the Bible in any language but the original because he said that the translations alone were awful. And I did start learning Hebrew and Greek from him to read parts of it. And yeah, they're absolutely... Do you know that Jesus told jokes in the Bible? There's quite a few of them, but we don't understand the jokes because we didn't understand Jewish humor 2,000 years ago. And not only that, our language structure takes the joke away. It doesn't work in English. So Jesus wouldn't have spoken... The Bible wasn't written in Aramaic. Jesus would only have spoken Aramaic at home. He would have spoken Koine, which is what the 3 of the Gospels were written in. The 4th was written in Hellenic Greek, which is a different Greek. But yeah, in the Bible there are several jokes, and you can read the original Koine. And we do understand that a bit better, which is good. And fortunately, due to a number of other things around, we do know what the cultures and things were like. So some of the better biblical scholars do know a lot more about what it was all for and said and so on and so forth, which is pretty cool. But that's not true of a lot of other cultures. So it does make it rather difficult. There are versions of Aramaic still spoken, very much changed, just as English has changed greatly. And we do know what the original Aramaic was like to a degree, but yes, I do agree it would be a difficult thing to try to understand, because language is cultural. There's a lot more to it than we think. Translations are terrible, and there's a standard rule with languages that if you can tell or understand a joke in a language, then you understand the language. You're absolutely correct, End of Thoughts. There are a huge problem with idioms and translations. Well, there's a perfect example right there. We know in technical modern English, if I say it's bad, I mean that it is negative. But we know that in cultural modern English, if I say it's bad, I mean it's really good. So right off bat, we're seeing problems in that regard. Not every written thing out there is written by a serious scholar using perfect language. So yeah, right there. And another thing is the changing of meaning. I mean, one which I laugh at quite often. 50 years ago, and in terms of history, 50 years is nothing. I mean, it's barely a spark. 50 years ago, if I said that you were gay, I meant you were happy. That's all, just happy. Nowadays, if I say you're gay, I mean that you're a homosexual. Totally different meaning. Totally, in every way. Yet, in 2,000 years? What could it mean then? Who's to say? I mean, it's, well, it can be used as a slur, it can be descriptive, but in both cases you've got change in meaning. It depends on context, it depends on people, it depends on so many different things that it becomes virtually impossible, unless you're in the place and of the time, to understand what the heck is going on. So when you're trying to understand what somebody's saying 2,000 years ago with no context and just their writing, so you get no tone, you get no background, you get no context. I mean, you're fighting a very losing battle right off bat. That's a very serious difficulty right there. Purely because language is terrible, and I think in many ways that's one of the reasons that you have to try to build a context. And yes, you're absolutely correct. Words do have multiple meanings. I mean, literally in modern age, I could say to you, endless thoughts, you are a bad girl. And I mean that you are negative in some manner. I could change the tone and say, you're bad, meaning you're actually pretty damn good. But you have to hear the tone and know the context to know the meaning. I can use it in other ways and say that an apple went bad, meaning it's gone rotten. I can, context is everything. It can refer to a physical state, it can refer to an emotional state, it can refer to a state of morality, and again, both ways. It can be a positive or a negative dependent, and cultural dependency as well. People love in the modern age to point out how I can use certain words because I'm me, but you can't because you're not. Well, just because of who I am, it means that it has a completely different meaning to what it is if you have it. How's anyone going to know that 2,000 years from now trying to read it? I mean, it's virtually impossible. It's so difficult. I don't know. I'm nevertheless quite glad that we have this diversity. I think without diversity, the world would be an immensely boring place. And I'm the sort of person that cannot stand boring. So I'm glad for it. I think it's great. I think that we are able to learn, and sometimes we can learn many things all the time, and from all kinds of cultures and places, which is absolutely fascinating. And I love that. I enjoy that. I think it's a brilliant thing in that regard. But it does make knowing history different. One of my favorite ones to argue and fight about, I was watching a video today where they were talking about pagan religions in the modern world. And as you know, heathens are the Chthonic or Nordic religions. No, they're not. No, they're not. Not actually. That's been an appropriated word for them. Heathens comes from English, and it means the same as pagans, which comes from Rome. And the original pagans were worshippers of Mithras, most likely. It had nothing to do with any other religion originally. Basically, both words refer to any religion that is a minority religion and not part of the major five. In other words, it's a general descriptor and has absolutely nothing to do with a specific religion. Specific religions have their own names, but in modern society, they insist on using the generalizations in specific ways and then acting as though it's always been that way and that's the correct way to refer to things. And speaking as someone that is obviously keen on history and all of that, that's the biggest load of rubbish ever. And I have the absolute opinion that you can get as many idiots on the internet as you can in real life, just so as you know. Really and truly, there are many differences. Lots and lots of differences. So we need to be a lot more specific when we talk. But by and large, we work with acronyms and generalities in the modern world, not with accuracy. It could have been in both ways. It could have been, yes, there is a cat. Here is a cat's tail. Say hello to the cat's tail. It could have been both. Also, I have literally seen somebody walk on water, and it happened in South Africa at Cozy Lake. And it was actually a hilarious incident because at Cozy Lake there is a particular place where it happens a lot. And I was standing overlooking from where we were in the house where you can see down the hill to the lake. And I see these guys walking across the lake. And at first I was like, hold on, what? You know? So I went and called the guy that I was staying with. I said, can you see this? And he laughed himself sick and he says, yes, they're walking on the water. Can't you see that? And I was like, wait. And he says to me, no, you see, at that point, because these are tidal lakes, on that place, there's a sandbank that goes across the lake, and you can save yourself walking an extra 40k around the lake by walking over the sandbank, where you will be at most knee-deep in water at low tide. So I really did see them walking across the lake, which everywhere else is quite deep. And I was just like, I can't be seeing this, but I did. And no, it wasn't religious. It was a perfectly ordinary scientific thing that you absolutely can do. But for someone who didn't know about the sandbar and the low tide and all the rest of it, as you can imagine, I was just like, hold on, what? So yeah, who knows? Maybe in the Sea of Galilee there was a sandbar there at some stage. Sandbars move all the time. And of course, you missed it, Endless Thoughts. It was right at the beginning, but we did a little comment on the fact that today was Rapture Day. Did you know that? According to quite a lot of different Christian groups, apparently, today's the day that the rapture was supposed to happen. So if you're still around, maybe you were not good enough to be taken up. Who's to say? I didn't go either, so don't feel lonely in that regard. But yeah, a lot of people said to me that it's Rapture Day. And yeah, sorry, I didn't go. You didn't go because you're here. Don't know what else to tell you. But I thought it would amuse you at the very least that there is that going on. And of course, rapture, as everybody knows, is only for Christians. Everybody else is absolutely a sinner. And seeing as I personally am no longer part of the Catholic Church, I suppose that makes me a particularly terrible sinner. So yeah, I definitely am not going to be part of any rapture. Nobody's going to come and save you. You have to be your own hero. Well, there's a lot of truth to that as well. I know that whenever I've needed anything, my cat here has abandoned me in a flash. But at the same time, when the cat wants something, I have to be the hero. So it seems that there is a double standard. If you're a cat, you can demand food and cuddles. And yeah, she has climbed on my lap, and because she's cold, she does that. When she's cold, she wants to be looked after and cuddled and stroked and treated better than everybody else. But if you think she'll ever do that for me, not a chance. No, because she's a cat and she's wicked. All cats are wicked, and that's why we love them. So there you go. But yep, that's where we stand at the moment. No rapture, and no answers as to whether or not the giants are really there. All we know is that we are here, and archaeology is far less true than you might think. So, yeah, we can only guess. Most of life is guessing, and that's the reason for science, I suppose. We do science simply because we learn more as we go along, and we continue to do science for that reason. Why? What would it help, dear endless thoughts? Are you hoping to be taken away? I don't know. I could be very rude and awful and nasty about faith. Having spent 9 years as a monk, I can tell you that faith brought nothing but more problems. It didn't make you happier. The way to have a happier life is to enjoy what you are and what you do. That's how you have a happier life. It doesn't work by relying on anything outside of you, be it a thing or a god. To be happier, you must be you. Well, if it, there we go, I've been rejected. If it would make you happy, then maybe. But I used to preach. I preached a lot. I preached all over Natal. It didn't make me happier. Maybe I'm just not a happy person. That's possibly true as well. I'm a fairly negative individual. But yep, I'm still around and I'm going to stick around. And I will tell you that, amongst other things, we will have a live tomorrow night. And it will be on something else. And hopefully, it will be weird and wonderful. And maybe if we understand enough and we realize that our main job is to be human, we will be better people. Or maybe not. But with that said, we have reached the end of all things, and people are not good, no matter where we go. And the truth is very probably not convenient wherever we go. And there is a great deal more that we need to consider and do and deal with in the world before we are ever suitable in that regard in any manner or form, I think. So people have a long way to go before we get to be good. And quite honestly, if aliens are out there, I have a strong suspicion that they lock their doors when they pass Earth. Which bits? I have never in my life met anybody, anytime ever, that teach all of it. Only the convenient parts, which is quite sad. And I once, as a point of bloody-mindedness, wrote a sermon which I was forbidden to do anything with, and they made me burn the notes because they said I was being very rude. But every little bit of it was biblically accurate, and it was truly awful in what it taught. And the main reason I did it was to see if I could. To see if actually is all of it important. And then I went and talked about it with this guy who was a biblical scholar. And he said to me that that's one of the problems. The more you learn, the more problems you have. Well, I can tell you, at least in the official Christian Bible, it does not tell people to go and preach. And I can tell you in the Gospels, Jesus did not go out to preach, ever. Go and read it. He went to quiet places and people went to him because he was a good enough person that people wanted to hear, and then he taught. But it seems in the modern world there are very few left who are good enough to attract people to come and hear teaching. Most of us are not good enough. So no, preaching is not in the Bible. You should not go and preach. It's not Christian. What you have to do is live a life such that people come to you and ask, and then you can teach them. Well, what is evil? That seems to be arguable as well. And I suppose, do you think you have within you enough goodness to share? Or would you find yourself in a position that you're preaching what you do not live? It's a worry. It's something that I worried about for 9 whole years, and partly was why I left in the end. There is only so much that can be done and should be done. And I've had a great many discussions on the matter of good and evil with a great many people from a great many religions and cultures. And I can honestly tell you to this day that I have made very, very limited progress in understanding any of it. But then that might be my failing. I always have too many questions in that regard. Well, having good values is something that I absolutely support. Good values should, at the very least, be universal, as long as you are attempting to be human. So in that regard, yeah, absolutely. I think that the most important way to teach people to be better is to teach them to be human. We are not born human. We become human. And that's a very different thing indeed. And many of us like to consider ourselves human, but we can't claim that at all. So human values, human goodness, be human. And I think it would go a lot better at bringing people together. I don't know. But we have reached our end, as I've said, and I don't have answers on the current topic because, frankly, I just don't know enough. All of the studies, all of the degrees, and all the rest of it, and I still don't have the answer to that. But I admire those who try. And with that, yes, humans can be evil, but so can many things. And I shall bid you all good night. And I hope that when you wake in the morning, you will find yourself a little bit more blessed. So sleep deep, sleep sweet, but sleep with one eye open, and keep that holy symbol near at hand, and maybe a baseball bat too, because you never know. There are things out there that go bump in the night, and I wouldn't want you precious people to have them go bump for you. Sleep sweet.